I'm sitting with Rizzo, my roommate's Frenchie, and I accidentally made the mistake of making her think that we were going to play. So hopefully she stays pretty quiet through this. But this video is going to be on my dark night of the soul and how I eventually got through it. So to begin with, a dark night of the soul is a term that we use often in spiritual communities that describes a period of your life that's particularly dark and is along the path of your spiritual awakening. So often this dark night can be catalyzed by really intensely emotional, heavy stuff, such as a significant breakup or a job loss or something even like coronavirus, like we're going through right now. And it gives you the opportunity to zoom out and see kind of what you've created, the kind of life that you've created for yourself. Everyone, we consciously think about our life and, you know, we go into it saying like, this is the kind of life that I believe will make me happy. And often for a lot of us, we end up in lives that we're like, oh no, I was wrong. I made a mistake somewhere and I got lost, and I'm not living a life that genuinely makes my heart and my soul happy. So that's okay. If that's where you are, that's all right. The dark night of the soul can last quite some time, but not all of it is going to feel terrible. You can think of it as being a ride at the theme park. There are a couple dips and turns. You're on the ride for a little while. There are high highs, there are low lows, but then eventually the ride ends. You know, it tops out at 3 minutes or 4 minutes, whatever it might be. So I have my journal again. I have some notes written down. Stay on track. Gonna try and keep this under 15 minutes. And you know, I can be a little verbose. So to begin with, let's talk about some of the phases that you might go through. For me, there was a phase of going through a period in my life where there was a decline in my happiness. For me, I would say that my dark night of the soul lasted about 8 years. It lasted from roughly 2012, and even though things are tough with coronavirus, I would say that I'm out of it. So I'd say roughly about 8 years for me. At this time, I was in a marriage, couldn't really find a pathway to extricate myself, didn't really know how that would be viewed by my family or my community, and just very much in fear of judgment because we do not take marriage lightly. And it was pretty obvious from a few months in that it was not going to be a happy and fulfilling choice, and I made a mistake. I didn't want to own up to it yet. So for me, there was a long period of decline where I kind of waited it out, unsure of whether or not it was going to get better. And of course, better being subjective. If I had wanted to stay in that marriage and been really attached to an outcome of it looking like a 70-year marriage, that would be an even bigger heartbreak than it was. It was a big heartbreak anyway, but that would have made it worse, or, you know, staying in something unhappy always makes it worse. So I had a long decline phase. A lot of that decline was marked by denial, thinking that things weren't as bad as they actually were, and really there were abuses taking place that my eyes were not open to them. I wasn't able to see at that time what was happening. For me, there was a lot of spiritual bypass. By month 9 in my marriage, I talk about this some in other videos, a major trauma occurred, and I turned toward prayer and meditation and yoga and the church and all this stuff. And those are great tools, but I was using them in a way that allowed me to gloss over really accepting how things were and making choices that were going to make a better situation. I would say things to myself like, well, this is my lot in life, and you know, it is what it is, and I'll get another try in the afterlife or in heaven or in the next lifetime. And I'm like, wow, looking back, it's like you were gonna sign up for like potentially 70 years of misery if we both had lived that long. So there was a long phase of spiritual bypass, using kind of that love and light, I'm going to use the word delusional kind of outlook, because delusional outlook is different than really looking inside and healing your wounds, and thus coming to have a different outlook. Delusional outlook is where I'm not going to look at any of my wounds because they are way too painful. I'll just ignore it and dissociate and disconnect. So that was a period marked by delusion as well. And finally it came to the torch it all phase, where it's just like, I cannot do this for even one more second, like kind of fuck this, I'm out. And that was a necessary that was a necessary phase for me. I think it's a necessary phase for all people on this journey, because in some ways, I think for most of us, we have to get to a point where enough is enough. I've been through enough. It's hurt long enough. It's gotten bad enough. I'm not going to be fucked over anymore, even if it means that I need to change completely who I am and who I interact with and how I treat myself. There is a fuck this, I'm out phase to it. So my dark night of the soul, if you're going through this during coronavirus times and it's been thrust upon you out of the blue, that's traumatic anyway. From my own experience, my dark night after the torch it all phase, that's the point where I decided to end a marriage. I was now 29 years old, going on 30, and moving back in with my parents into my little sister's bedroom, who was already, you know, in a beautiful marriage at that time. She married her high school sweetheart, and they're going strong. But it was very much a leveling out of all of the false, fake bullshit, all of the things that were not really authentic to me, but more of like, most people in society get married. Most people in society work this kind of job. Most people in society, you know, take this general life template and make it their own, with very little deviation or individuality. And so it gave me a chance to bring that down to the foundation. That's not to say that the patterns cleared up immediately. I did build a lot of false structures and false relationships going forward from that, because the healing journey it takes time. It takes a long time to turn inward and to start to peel away the layers of the onion and look at things that hurt. So that's normal. You can still find a lot of happiness even when there's a lot of work that still remains undone. So my dark night, I moved into my parents' house. I had left my job as I was a public school librarian, and I adored it. I love my kids, but I knew it wasn't my soul's path. And that turned out to be a blessing in disguise, that although I was not working, I was taken care of in my parents' house. You know, I wasn't going to have to like go and take a job to feed myself. They were going to give me what they ate for dinner too. They're pretty solid people. But I found that my energy level was so low. I didn't have the energy to do really much else other than lay in bed and like process emotions and write in my journal and take naps. I looking back, I don't think I could have held a job. I wasn't able to work at that period. And I had a couple of big turning points. One was being catalyzed into this kind of this fuck it mode, which came about through meeting someone who I had a very intense connection with, and being forced to look at whether or not this was a stable long-term structure, and was this marriage leading to the best version of me? Was it going to be solid and strong if I continued to evolve as a person? Was this person going to walk that path with me, or even support me walking that path independently? So the answer for me was no, that wasn't going to happen. We had tried for a long time, and it was a mutual, let's get out of this. Another big turning point for me was about 6 months into my healing of just being in my parents' house and looking at some of the uncomfortable things, and even looking at their relationship dynamic and the things that I took into my marriage that worked or didn't work, or things that I liked and things I didn't like, or even something like gender roles, or even just preference of roles that people take in relationship, and kind of get to see them up close and see what my programming was, what my parents did, because I was going to take that with me into the relationships that I created. So one of my big turning points was taking a part-time job and I was doing brand sampling for a drink called Bai. It's that one at the supermarket that's spelled BAI, and I think it's like antioxidant water or something like that. And working for Bai, this little part-time gig, that really only entailed me chit-chatting with people, making small talk, helped me find my purpose. And to be clear, purpose and calling are not the same thing. Calling takes a long, long, long time, a lot of little stepping stones on your path, to eventually get to a work, a service mission in the world. I would consider that a calling. Purpose can be something that's really broad, where you take your purpose with you everywhere that you go. I found one of the elements to my purpose to be uplifting people, forming community, raising spirits, raising people's spirits into feeling better. And working these little part-time gigs gave me enough time outside of processing and heavy emotionality to just go be a human golden retriever and go chit-chat with people and be out of my element. And yeah, it was a forced smile. It was kind of turn that frown upside down and put on a happy face, but it was balancing. It was no longer bypassing for the sake of making other people more comfortable around me. It was a balancing act of, you're already doing the work, there's a lot of heavy stuff in your life, you need to practice, making a practice of finding ways to be happy. So that was a big turning point for me. Bye, antioxidant water. Another big turning point for me was leaving the place where I had become sick. And I think folks get tripped up here because a lot of us look at our family of origin and we're not, a lot of times they're nice, normal people, and that's fine if they are. But being very close to people that you were sick around, if they are not equally walking that path, it just becomes very easy to fall into a well-worn groove of being the same character in their play when you're trying to rewrite a new script, if that makes sense. So I decided to leave New Jersey. That was a point where I took my long road trip from New Jersey and decided to move to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This gave me time for, we're venturing into the woo-woo, and I see we're at 15 minutes already. This is gonna be a long one. This gave me a chance for my energy body to heal. It needed time, it needed physical space from dynamics that were unhealthy that I could get pulled into. And it needed psychic space. It needed a space to be a little bit less worried about, where there weren't so many people, where I was in their line of sight, being depressed every day, and thus kind of collecting some of their emotional, those sticky emotional thoughts of like, oh, Jillian's depressed, or when is she gonna get it together, or I just don't know, I don't know about this kid of ours. Maybe this is just the black sheep of the family. I think there's something to be said for out of sight, out of mind, and that can be something that's beneficial, and it was for me. Moving gave me a chance to get into alignment. And so what I mean by alignment is the most pure essence of me, deep in my heart. What are the things that I need to do to be true to my own heart? So for me, I always really enjoyed dance. I started to dance more. I enjoy humor. I started to watch more stand-up comedy, or go out to the comedy clubs, or just go out and be in nature. I took time to do things that tick the box of being enjoyable and also tick the box of being wholesome. So like, drug use can be really fun. That's not going to help me progress on my healing journey. And I have an interesting reason why. I don't know if we'll get to it. We'll see what's in the notes. I can't remember what I wrote. But basically this time, in this dark night of the soul, spoiler alert, it's all about learning lessons. Learning specifically lessons about self-love, self-value, self-worth, and self-fulfillment. A lot of us were brought up in the kind of environment where our worth is, dogs down here, our worth was kind of based upon how easy it was to get along with us. If we rocked the boat, we weren't, desirable. If we made the family more, if we rocked the boat, they didn't want us around. I'll just leave it at that. And so we ended up taking parts of ourselves and rejecting them. So like, let's say for example that I really love dance, and it's something very true to my core essence. If you see me in real life, like if there is a sound, I'm moving to it. That's part of who I am. Let's say that I was teased for dance, or it just wasn't okay, or I was kind of shamed out of it, like, you're not good enough, you're not a good dancer, just stop, you're embarrassing yourself, that kind of thing. And so I went a long time without dancing. If I leave that part of myself repressed, that's going to be a part of myself that I need to bring back into alignment by engaging with that activity. So this becomes a way of protecting ourselves. Our protection and getting to be part of the group is that if something is annoying or undesirable to our community, we would stop doing that. And that's really in direct contrast to things that are going to be self-loving, things that are going to give us feelings of fulfillment. And as we progress on this path, being in service or being a kind person or being a loving person, you can't leave yourself out of that equation. It is not love if you're being left out in the cold, if you're just made to appease people. That is not love. It's it's going to be unhappy, it's going to be unfulfilling, and ultimately you and the people around you are going to end up manipulating each other to get what you want. Because if someone's being left out of the love, then there's a lot of disharmony at play there. So, going on, how do we fill up our cup? This kind of goes back to things that we can do to regularly uplift ourselves. We can use routines. Every morning when I get up, for example, I'll sit and meditate. After I meditate, I'll down a couple glasses of water. I'll down my green juice. I can find regular upliftment in my communities. Am I touching in with, for me, these are mine, Al-Anon community, my dance community, my singing group community. Did I call my sponsor this week? I like to call him every day, whether or not I can get him on the phone. Do I have a church community or a temple community or something where my belief system is uplifted and my values are observed? Do I have that as a mainstay in my life? And am I in service? Service is interesting because you need to really spend some time getting clear about who you are and what you want to give into the world, where your boundary is, and where that cross section is where everyone wins. I need to be equally loved. My community needs to be equally loved. And where do my wholesome desires and their wholesome needs and desires intersect? How can I serve them in a way that also serves myself and makes me feel loved and valued and fulfilled? Important stuff. And of course, alongside all of that is doing the inner work. You can think of these things as gas stations. These communities, the hobbies, the service work, the routines, these are gas stations. And you can stop at the gas station an unlimited number of times, but if there is a hole in the gas tank, a hole in your energy field, or back to the woo-woo, but a hole in the energy field or a hole in the gas tank, you'll always need to fill up your tank with outside sources. Oop, we have some puppy interference. Hey, can you scoot? Can you scoot? That's our favorite thing, scooting. So sorry. All right. We were saying if we don't patch the holes in the gas tank or in the energy field, we're always going to be seeking outside of ourselves to validate us, to fill us up. So there is an element of patching that hole, patching the hole in the gas tank that's allowing all the gas to leak out. In the energy body, we need to also patch that by doing inner child work, going back to those old painful memories and caretaking ourselves, and learning to genuinely accept the things about ourselves that are beautiful and important and easily loved, and the parts of ourselves that we don't like or that we were taught not to like. Or maybe I have a deep, dark secret, I've had a lot of them, that I need to genuinely look at and be like, I'm going to choose to be okay with this and to accept it as something that happened in my life or something in my life that I did, and go forward from here. These are all ways of patching your energy field so that when you go to the gas station, you can fill all the way up. It would almost be like going full solar on your car, and then you just run on the power of the sun. That's not meant to be like a Christian joke, but it happens to coincide with my personal beliefs. So anyway, I hope this is helpful. We're going on 25 minutes. It's been a long one. We got a little off topic there in the middle. So I hope it was clear to you. I love you so much. Write me a comment. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon.